Hello, everyone. My name is Letty Mashiane from the DHA team. I'm here on my topic, Python scripting in Blender. So I want to first start by explaining what Blender is. It is a free open source program, which can be downloaded anywhere, Windows, iOS, and Linux, anywhere. So it basically involves graphics, just creating basically a lot of things that are 3D, 2D, depends on how you want to use it. So it's coded in C, C++, and Python, and it uses Python scripting for the API. So what you do when you want to get Blender, you just download it on Google and install it in your PC. And the first thing you get when you open it is the screen, which is basically what's going on. So it has a lot of things. That's one thing about Blender. The UI is very confusing. There's the upper bar, which has like layers, modeling, basically a lot of things. So what you can, So what you can do, just when you get Blender, obviously you have to go through the basics. Just go to YouTube, free tutorials and anything, just learn the basics. And what you go through is basically moving things around, like this cube that you get right here. You can scale it, you can paint it, you can cut it into multiple pieces, basically a lot of things. Enlarge it and also merge it with other objects that you can create. So you can also delete it as well and also add some other objects in it, which come with Blender. You can also add spheres and everything. So, and that's how you start creating stuff in Blender. So what you can do with it is there's video editing in Blender, there's game making, and there's also, you can also create your own models and architectural stuff, even interior design, basically anything 3D. What was new to me was also the 3D printing. And I guess it's also used in VR and also multiple stuff. So just a little background about how I got to know Blender. I knew it in 2019, I think it was in 2019. And when I first downloaded it, I thought this was going to be easy. Went through a few tutorials and just realized you just do a lot of clicks and tweaking and playing around with it. And one thing about it is that you can never know everything about it because there's a lot of things and it changes all the time. I think right now we're on Blender 3.0, the version. So it grows every day. Now, one thing that I got interested in when I knew about Blender is scripting, because there's literally scripting inside of it. And I first want to explain what scripting is, how Python scripting is. So it's Python scripting is converting high-level instructions into machine language. So which is just coding, but I think it's less code because you just want to automate some stuff in whatever environment you're working in. So one thing about it is that it uses an interpreter instead of a compiler. And yeah, that's basically scripting. And then now we're on to the question, why scripting in Blender? So scripting in Blender gives you the ability to transform many aspects of how you can use the program. So if you've ever used Blender before, one thing you should know is that you make a lot of clicks. So with that, you can automate specific tasks to make things easy for you. I feel like that's one great thing about it. You can customize your UI. You can run render commands with it and create your own new functions. There are also a lot of uses, which I will not cover right now, but I'll basically explain these points in just now. So automating a task, we're gonna start with the example of adding 3 monkey heads into the Blender scene. So one thing about doing it manually or the usual way without scripting is that you go into Blender, you'll see the cube, you'll delete it, of which you'll just right click and press X to delete, or just delete it with your right click, and then options will appear with the delete option, and then you delete it. And then you add a monkey. That's what we're heading for. So far you'll just add 1, of which you'll just shift A, and then you choose the object, of which I'll be going for the monkey. And then the screen, of which I can't really demo it right now, should show the monkey. And then we have 1. So in order to get 3, you have to duplicate it, which you just press Shift D, and then you place it, the usual duplicating of stuff. And then because you don't want objects to be in the same space, you're gonna have to change the locations for it. So that's a lot of things for me because I'm lazy. So one thing about scripting that I found out is that there is this option right here at the top. I don't know if I can see it. It's called scripting. So what happens when you immediately click it is that it gives you this different UI, which I think most of us are familiar with the Python console. And this right here will be where you put your code. So one nice thing about Blender is that it literally shows you everything that you do, the tasks that you're doing. So far, it just shows you that you have this world, which is equals to true. It's showing this. And then once you start moving around and playing around with it, and you delete the cube and then you add the monkey, you can see right here that it says this has been added, which right here would be the monkey that is on the screen. So this will be our variable as programmers or people that are lazy that just want to automate stuff. So let's say you want to create those 3 heads, but you don't want to go through all of that. So you're just going to take this variable and use it in a code. So you're going to be, this is the code I'm going to be using. I want to import, add 3 monkey heads into the screen. So I'm going to grab that variable and put it into my for loop of range 3. So this is me putting it into the screen. The text file, I can name it however I want. I'm going to call this multi-Susies because apparently the monkey head is called Susan in Blender. I don't know who named it though. So you just put this and then you run the code, and then those 3 heads appears instead of doing multiple clicks. So which means you can also just do a lot in just 1 line of code. Okay, not 1, maybe 2, 3, instead of just doing multiple clicks. Because right now, if I didn't do it with code, if I wanted 150 heads separated equally, I guess I'd have to be duplicating these 3 heads into 6 and multiplying all the time, which is just a lot for me. So that's just one great thing that I like about it. And now we're going to the customizing UI. So as you've seen, the UI that appears first when you enter Blender, that's that cube. So as you start using Blender a lot, you'd want some tools that you maybe use a lot, or maybe you want to separate your screens and everything. So instead of just moving around and just tweaking everything and adding that and adding those tools, you can just put that in a script and just run it, and this will appear. So that's also one nice thing about it. You can just customizing your UI. And that's it with the UI part. And then next would be the render commands. So rendering in Blender is, I would like to I think it's similar to executing. So you have your stuff, you play around with your stuff, and now you want to see the final product. So you render it, but this includes lights and also the position of the camera. So the left-hand side would be the rendered part, and the right-hand side would be just you playing around with it and modeling stuff. So with this, one thing about rendering is that it also requires multiple selects and clicks, because you want to position your camera, you want the lighting to be perfect, you want it to be specific and everything. Maybe you also want to move your camera around. You can do that with the Python scripting. I can demo it right now because I think it takes a lot, and using pictures would just be confusing. But yeah, the same way I coded that for loop, you can basically use Python scripting to do rendering commands. And the last thing, which is the cool part, would be creating your own functions. So okay, let's say you want bubbles. You're always doing maybe games that involve bubbles in them, and you're tired of always using the same thing every day, or maybe just copying it and just pasting it. So what you can do is just also use scripting for it. Put it in a .py file, save it somewhere, and then whenever you need bubbles, you just put them in. So one other cool thing about creating your own function is that you can edit as this Blender feature called add-on. So I'd like to think that it's similar to libraries or scripts. Let me just say scripts, because it's basically just, yeah, it's just scripts, but you put them in your preferences so you can select them instead of always importing that .py file that you saved somewhere in your PC. So you can just put it in Blender, forget that it's somewhere in the PC, maybe you forgot like which file it's at, and then it will be under this add-on space. So yeah, you find the add-ons under the Blender preferences. And one other thing is that users around the world do create their own add-ons and they place them in here, which is also one great thing about Blender, because people do communicate. It's open source. You can literally just play around with it. So I think that's it for my talk. Thank you, everyone.